tawdry areas of mind control endeavor, Tavistock, the original OSS CIA, the Dulles brothers, MK Ultra, all of that, many other scientists since you lapsed into a deep state where you really no longer have the ability to discern and differentiate and make moral judgments about what's going in and just pour us in.
What we call reality is made of the mind. It's basically a giant fantasy we shape and define. It's safe to say that it's a fallacy that slavery died. They just change how they corral us and the way we confine. We degraded and declined, now we hate to be kind.
Hello there. Yes, this is a tough thing to talk about, because I feel like my observation is honest, but I know that people have not had this observation, and it's hurtful to come to this awareness. Today's observation. I was just reading something from Whitney Webb. If you haven't seen any of Whitney Webb's work, she's probably one of the top independent journalists in the world. And it was in regards to the Capitol Police of Washington, D.C. are now using military gear and surveillance and tactics to protect the Capitol. The insurrection. The insurrection was theater. And this is the comparison I'm going to show. And I'm sorry but this is what's happening. Here's in relation to 9/11. 9/11, people were murdered. 3,000 people are still dying from that event. But the fact of the matter was that was an attack on the physical body of American citizens. That attack could have never altered the principles of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. Never. Inalienable rights endowed by the Creator are the principles of freedom in life. An attack on someone's physical body is a crime. These are two different situations. Another issue that needs to be addressed was, if you're going to look at, if let's just say this is a suggestion of a possibility that we, as using common sense, and that there's things in the world that sometimes we have to take into consideration to protect ourselves and our family and our country. That just to suggest, what if the insurrection, because here's the idea with the insurrection. The Capitol building is simply a structure. It could be taken over and it could be occupied, but the principles of freedom could never be altered. Because what we have forgotten, or maybe have not understood, is that these United States are not the borders, are not the buildings, are not the structures. It's not Yankee Stadium, it's not the Pentagon, it's not the Sears Tower. These are buildings that are successful extensions derived from the success of the principles of freedom. And that it may, and if that, like, we could put that aside, the principles of freedom is you, because the United States of America, and this is going back to the beginning, are a body of individuals. The reason we call it a constitution is that it's related. The forefathers understood the human condition. So it's checks and balances is because they understood man is fallible. That is an understanding of the human condition. So your freedom is your state of being free. The building you live in is a derivative. We do protect that, but that is secondary. People who take the oath to serve take an oath to protect the Declaration of protect the freedom, the Constitution, and the people. It's separate. The first principle is freedom. So people could take over a building and occupy it, but it could never alter the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It's theater, and it's public relations. because it's suggesting that it's taken over. And this goes back to 9/11. And some of the suggestions I need to, from a media aspect, and now you could see I'm going to put in a link too as well. There's a woman who has been talking about domestic terrorism, and she speaks upon 9/11, and she talks about it as a visual. That is a talk of someone that uses an image to convey a message. That's what media is. If you go back to Sergei Eisenstein and propaganda, and his Sergei Eisenstein was one of the celebrated filmmakers that used structure, cinematic language, to communicate communistic propaganda. I've studied his structure not because of communism, but because it's how to learn. It's important to understand the language of media. So, and images are repeated. So here's some of the factors of 9/11. One, although that tragedy happened, that tragedy could never alter the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. Two, there were 3 targets: the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and then they said it was going to be the White House, right? Again, just like the building is being shown as a symbol, like the Washington D.C. is shown as a symbol of what America is. That's reinforcing that the World Trade Center, which was really just an economic center, it may have been a big component of our economy, but it was a symbol. And then the Pentagon. So some say, can it be that is the military-industrial complex? Also, not that this has anything to do with the people that were murdered there, but Wall Street has ties to Great Britain. If you talk about Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, these are guys. Carnegie's in his own writings, his biography says that, or it might not have been his biography, but in his own writings says that yes, that America was going to be brought back into Great Britain again. These are people that have spoken upon this. So what we need to understand is that the idea of Richard Pearl, all the neocons coming out saying the world has changed. No, people died. There was a crime. But those people, through murdering Americans, could never alter the principles of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. Or perhaps more just the Declaration of Independence, because inalienable rights endowed by the Creator is a natural law. It is a principle of freedom like gravity. You cannot alter that. This is what's happening. This is psychological warfare through propaganda. So, the insurrection are people in a structure. Although we shouldn't allow that. We need to protect it's like the border, but that's another thing, like the borders. These 50 states are not the United States of America. That could be altered at any time. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't protect our borders for the people that live there, because we're going to protect the people. But we can never mistake that as the principle of what the United States is. It is it's a derivative. The principle are the principles of freedom. This is why, and many people don't understand, these are all images and symbols being enacted to cultivate a new culture that goes against our basic principles. And having soldiers protecting the White House is just a symbol of that it is not ours anymore. That we, the people, are not in control. So it makes me think of, during 9/11, there was "Y" written with someone's finger in the dust. Well, here's your answer. So, and I don't mean to hurt anybody. I don't want to be right about this. But this propaganda has always been a tool of the military. There's been time at different wars where they would fly through an area of the enemy and drop down leaflets. It's a tactic. They're using our own media against us. I mean, if you look at the footage of the insurrection, I mean, what I would suggest is, I forget his name, but there was one of the young men I saw it before and after. He was arrested at the insurrection. If I had to bet, I would guarantee this was a guy who was an actor. They're hiring people from like backstage to come to these events. I was involved with the thing, immersive theater. Immersive theater is a new thing where people are invited to come to improvise in public spaces. It's been happening for years. So, if you know, I think it was down in South Carolina, there was an event that it came out to say when they were pulling down this, I think it was Charlottesville, I forget the name, but yes, it was put that they were people hired in the want ads to show up at these events. This is, if you're not aware, in the acting world, it was called backstage, and so actors would go to backstage and get like background work. And so they would call up and they would be hired just to be part of the background for an event. These are the tactics that are being used by these intelligence agencies. And if you look, and this has a lot to do with Israel. Israel's influence with their cybersecurity, if you're not aware, and this is again I got from Whitney Webb's work, the IDF and the cybersecurity industry of Israel has offered its cybersecurity for free, pro bono, to every hospital in the United States of America. I mean, that doesn't mean that their subcontractors aren't going to get paid with your tax dollars and Homeland Security, but it does mean that they have access to all of your data. And now, if you look at COVID-19, the mandates, all these new rules of law and guidelines, the CDC and other private corporation who's talking to the WHO, which is a global private corporation. These are all structures. These are power structures being put upon our principles of freedom, because the United States of America isn't a structure of power. The United States of America are principles of freedom with a constitution to protect them. And then we're not intended to have standing armies, because when standing armies are standing around, they need something to fucking do. Dwight D. Eisenhower's farewell address warned us against the military-industrial complex. Wall Street, the Pentagon, the White House, the military-industrial complex. Those are the symbols that were under attack and needed to be defended. And then we went on a war on terror where we went around the Middle East conquering other countries. And if you're not aware of it now, one of the Israeli tactics in their cybersecurity, what they do with this intelligence is they'll go into an area and they will create problems. And this is British intelligence as well. I mean, if you go back to the British East India Company, they would go when they took over India. When they went into India, they hired, there was opium addicts in India, and they organized them. And what they would do is they would have them terrorize people who were powerful in India that would stand against them when they were taking over the country. And that's when they, removed their gun laws, before they removed all the guns. Israelis do the same thing. Because what happens is they'll go into an area, they'll create problems. When the people defend themselves and respond, they still have a camera crew there and say they're being attacked. They're doing this now in the United States. And one of the other aspects, there's something right now called Citizens Against Political Persecution. And what we need to understand is during the insurrection, they held Americans without due process. So even the guy with the horns, or whatever they're calling him, this is I got from going through some of the events with Kara Castronova and their organization, who are fighting for these political prisoners that are being held. But I'll suggest that's an extension of the theater, because these are chess players. These are master chess players using media and using theatrics to set up, because what really the takeover is through technology. Because we may put our focus on these people being held, but really what's happened is, if you look at Welcome Leap, if you look up their relationship with DARPA, right? This is how that it's a technocracy. So the taking over of the Capitol building is simply like a ruse, because it's being taken over through technology. Welcome Leap, the third program, they talk about how they're going to use data analytics. They're going to use neuroscience to go into a 3-year-old's brain to make a diagnostic in regards to its projected behavior and work on it to make sure that the behavior goes into outcome-based, the outcome that they have created a standard for. Does that have to do with inalienable rights endowed by the Creator? No fucking way. So my suggestion is, not only is the theater of the insurrection just at its face not an attack on these United States, because inalienable rights endowed by the Creator is living in our bodies. It is us. We are a nation of individuals. We are a body of individuals. The Constitution of all of us represents the Constitution of the one. And we are to protect your freedoms, because in so I am honoring mine, and you protect mine because I am honoring yours, because we are Americans, these United States of America. We are not employees of a global corporation or the Wall Street Corporation. We are not just pensioners. I'm sorry, I mean, it's just, I don't mean to, people work very hard to get what they have, but these are the devices, these are the tools that are creating this coup. And people are complying to it. They're doing it, this is like a silent war, silent weapons for silent wars. So the taking over of the Capitol building is really just a flank or a smokescreen to how they're really taking it over through technology, through big tech, big pharma, the voting. Voting isn't, it's not through hacking. It's the fact that you have this is what it is, right? If you have a politician, or say you want to go to your councilman, or say you want to go to talk to your child student. Now you need to go on the Zoom chat. There's no difference from that than having a guy going to speak to your kid's student, and a man stands in front of you and say, "Give me $20." What for? If you want to talk to her, you got to give me $20. That's the same thing of saying, I have to buy a device, I have to get internet, I have to do all these things, right? And then when you give that guy $20, what he says, well, I'll tell her. How do you know he's going to give her the right information if you're not talking to her yourself face to face? Because what a Zoom chat is you're not face to face. And if you're not aware, anything can be hacked. The whole digital system can be hacked. You could be in your office and you think your boss is sitting on the first floor. They could be sitting in Tel Aviv. The whole healthcare industry right now could be run from Tel Aviv. I don't mean to pick on Israel. It's not about Judaism. I respect all people who practice, I believe in separation of church and state. You see my work with covering Vera Shavar and Rabbi Green. You'll understand that I understand it's not about any of these divisions. We have to put all those aside at the moment. This is about the human condition. These are crimes against humanity, and they're doing it through technology. So 9/11 was not only an attack on those people, but it was a setup of a public relations campaign, and also images. This is why the Pledge of Allegiance has become also important at the moment, because people don't understand what it's attached to, and people do not understand anymore the separation of church and state. And what has happened in 20 years of war, the idea of God and country has been promoted between the military. And because there are people who do have strong ties to their religion, and I honor that, and God bless you, or whatever that is for you, but that has nothing to do with our country, because it's separation of church and state. And what you need to understand is God and country is the cry of the king, is the cry of those who stand up for the king. And why? Because the king is the expression of divine right on earth. And the reason why the king was because the vicar of whoever the religious organization is the voice of God on earth with no authority and no peer. And he was the one that said, God spoke to me and said, this king has divine right to rule over you and the whole globe. So when someone says God and country, they mean the king. And I'm not judging people who believe this. This is the religious right, and this goes the same thing with the Israeli right. These people have been conditioned to see these things, and so God and country and this whole military who see this have been indoctrinated in something that goes against the basic principles of what it is to be an American, and the oath they have taken to protect and serve, to protect the Constitution and the people of the, has been obfuscated. So these are things we need to understand. We need to understand, you know, just look up the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. It's written by a socialist priest. I have nothing against. My personal opinion is if we are acting from basic principles of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and because what has happened is our economic system has been taken out of its which needs to be put in its proper place. Because really, in a society, the economy is a component that serves the society. And in the United States of America, you could have, of course it's going to be imperfect, but if you have any kind of economic system, not centralized to a Federal Reserve, a central bank, which is one of the first steps that we relinquished our freedoms of coining money in the Constitution. But if you have an economy, you can argue all day over the ways you're going to run the economy, but if the economy and the mechanisms that are born from it are derived from the basic principles of the Constitution, it doesn't matter. But we allowed our capitalist structure, and if you're not aware of it, the global players, the global bankers, are funding both the capitalists and the communists. China, if you see what China is now, this is my perception of what it is. Basically, if you don't understand the Rockefellers, they've been courting, and global bankers have been courting China for decades. So if you're a businessman, what is slavery? Slavery is wage. Slavery is labor that you don't have to pay for. What is a communist country? Similar thing. So if you look at a corporation as a global corporation, then how you see China is the communist government and simply middle management, and the people are your workers. They're seeking to implement that structure throughout the whole world, but they're putting in it the guise of social credit scores. We're going to have essential workers that are going to make really comfortable. This is happening today. The insurrection could never alter the Declaration of the Constitution. 9/11 attacks could never alter the Declaration of the Constitution, but the neocons did. The Patriot Act did. Homeland Security is. And this is the root of it, the Bethlehem Doctrine, because that's the doctrine that justifies preemptive action. And now the floodgates are open, and now we have preemptive action in health. DARPA, which was a government deep state that dealt with research and development for years, from taxpayer dollars going into biotech surveillance. Regina Dugan going to Silicon Valley, starting Welcome Health, Welcome Leap, with Silicon Valley, with money from the Wellcome Trust, which goes back as another health fund of Global Health Fund. These are from Welcome. These are global players that we fought against to declare our independence. They do not care about individual freedom. You are their employee, and although you may be happy in your little position with your pension, it will not last, and your children will not enjoy it. So you may be jockeying for position, but I would think again how you're jockeying. And if you don't dare wave the American flag or pledge allegiance to the flag until you understand what the fuck you're talking about. Because the freedom is under attack. And that's that.
Dark and rather tawdry areas of mind control endeavor, Tavistock, the original OSS-CIA, the Dulles brothers, MK Ultra, all of that. Many other scientists since you lapsed into a deep state where you really no longer have the ability to discern and differentiate and make moral judgments about what's going in and just pours in.
What we call reality is made of the mind. It's basically a giant fantasy we shape and define. It's safe to say that it's a fallacy that slavery died. They just change how they corral us in the way we can find. We degraded and decline, now we hate to be kind. Educated might as well be now we're trained to be blind. We hate to lie, now we follow Satan's design. Don't believe in our creator, so the state is divine. What's it take to get the nation to awaken in time and decimate the swine just to make them pay for their crime? That's the reason why state and bank created this rhyme. To emanate light, make it radiate where it shines. Contemplated the signs and I would say that it's fine. We need to start to be defiant to escape from the bind. Ain't afraid to use the violence, so we'll spray with the knife. Cause we need to kill the tyrants just to save us from dying.
They're learning things, they're being programmed. They don't understand pain. They see violence, it's one-dimensional, two-dimensional at best. We have mind control in all facets of this society.
Hey yo, they want us to be gone, every woman and man slaughter. They train the thought is there ain't no land they can't conquer. Some damn stalkers out of implantable transporters just to watch us and be tracking the path that a man wants us. Washing all the brains of the murderers that they make. Taking soldiers and creating Manchurian candidates. Paying scientists to torture innocent folks. Experimenting with drugs so they're for Simpson, no. Giving psychedelics to hippies in San Francisco. They try to change the world, but they really never did shit though. Government supplying the drugs to keep us docile. So we'll be too high to unite and try to be hostile. A lost child feeling horrible pain. And an asylum being ran by you for the insane. Find a way to break away from all the lies you told. We gotta save this world controlled by mind control.
And in each of these cases, we're told these are global crises that cannot be handled at the local and national level. They are global crises that require.
And yo, the plan worked. Mind control ran rampant on planet Earth. Handed the Saran Manson and Patty Hearst. The son of Sam and Jim Jones and Tim McVeigh. All were brainwashed and became the range renegades. Set the stage to bring it down to Virginia Tech. The Navy Yard shooter ran his weapon to VLF. Infected by a secret operation they made. The broadcast wavelengths that resonate with your brain. The same as how antennas work. Your body's a receiver. The non-believers know nobody on its favorite heaters. It's obvious the leaders plan to not be dethroned. So they'll populate the